Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pipeline Podcast. I'm your host today, Daren Mcclimans. We have a lot of fun topics here today, fully talking about expanding the Last of Us universe, Marvel delays once again, and a full-on discussion about the first full season of My Adventures with Superman. Today, I am joined by first ever time guest on the channel, Kyle Arking. Buddy, how's it going? Welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Daren. It's great to be here. I think that we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and I especially can't wait to talk about My Adventures with Superman because
Yes.
I'll just say it right now, it has blown me away. It is one of my favorite animated series.
Absolutely, man. It's been such a fun ride, and I can't believe it's over already. Like, it feels like it
Yeah.
literally just started.
Especially if you look back on, older animated series, we used to have longer
Mm,
seasons. We used to have
sure.
like at least like 20 or so episodes, but now, with it being about 10 episodes, it isn't, quite the
Mm.
same. So,
Yeah, man. I feel like that's most shows now too.
Mhm.
I definitely think there are pros with having these like shorter seasons, but back in like when I was younger, I used to have these like 22 episode seasons, and it's like these are very long seasons, and you were watching for like an entire year. So it's definitely changing around here. But Kyle, this is your first ever episode. Really first time I'm really ever talking to you. Like we haven't
Yeah.
talked that much kind of going into this episode. So I did just want to ask for you and then anyone who might end up watching, if you want to tell, if you want to tell us about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so my name's Kyle Arking. I am a YouTuber. You can find my YouTube channel. It's just Kyle Arking on YouTube, and I post
Link down
movie
below.
reviews, TV reviews. Sometimes if there's like a huge major news story, I might try and talk about it, but most of the times I'm more so in the TV and movie review front,
Hmm.
and I tend to review shows when they finish because I've learned that, if you're watching a show and about halfway through you're not enjoying it that much, you feel
Yeah,
a little funny continuing to review the show. So I think it's better to watch the whole show to get the
sure.
better perspective on and that's what I did with My Adventures with Superman. I
Huh?
waited for the final episode. And yeah, and I'm on Twitter, and you can find me on all sorts of social media, but I'm most active on Twitter, and that's my tag. I put at Arking Kyle. That's capital ARKING, capital KYLE. So yeah.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's so great to have you here. I say let's just jump into some of our first kind of news stories here today. And yeah, let's kind of jump right into it. So first up here, and again, if you haven't seen the show, if you don't know what's kind of going on with the show, completely fine. But The Last of Us, apparently spin-offs are possible according to Craig Mazin. So, did you watch the show? Have you played the games at all? Are you like a fan of this franchise?
Bel Believe it or not, I actually interviewed the editor that worked on this show,
Oh yeah?
Timothy Good, and he was a wonderful interview. But I love the show. I thought it was really, really incredible. I mean, I played the games, both Last of Us Part 1, Part 2, and I even played the DLC that came with the first Last of Us. But I mean, the show really was stunning. It gave us everything that we could have, I think, wanted from this series, at least the first game. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. I think the acting was incredible. The production design was incredible. So yeah, like this is actually news to me because I don't think I actually heard they were thinking about spin-off shows because I've been out of the loop, I think, on that front.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. And like the past month or so it's been very dry for news. So it's been me very looking for literally anything to talk
Yeah.
about on here. But I mean, I think people say this kind of stuff a lot. Like in a time where there's not much news about The Last of Us, it's like, how do we keep people talking about our show? Let's talk, like, maybe we'll do spin-offs at some point. Maybe we'll do this and this and this. Um, I mean, like, I would love spin-offs. I'm a huge, like, spin-off guy. I think they can be very, very cool if done right. But I'm trying to think about from both games, and, like, slight spoilers if you played the games, most characters get killed off, right? Like, there aren't a lot of, like, supporting characters, like, at the end of, like, movie, or, like, game
Yeah.
1 and game 2. So I don't know who they would choose to have spin-offs on.
I mean, I'm thinking of Fear the Walking Dead, which is,
Mhm.
I think, the most notorious, I guess you could say, zombie spin-off made, where
Yeah,
they end up, focusing on these brand new characters created in that
sure.
world. And I never watched the show, but I just, that's where my mind is
Sure.
going to, and I guess they can somewhat come up with a way to still continue the world even without these main characters. But I think the thing with The Last of Us is that Joel and Ellie are the main characters
Yeah.
of this series. And to not have them as a part of the, shows, I think you lose that connection, because then
Sure.
it just becomes like every other zombie
Zombie thing.
based,
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's totally fair. And, like, like, again, like, I am currently watching the Walking Dead for, like, the first time, so I haven't got to the point where people have, like, a, like, disdain for it, like they ultimately do with 11 seasons and then, like, 5 spin-offs and games and books. Like, it's become this massive thing now. And, like, when this show was happening, or, like, when it was coming out, everyone was like, this is better than, like, The Walking Dead, and it does
Mhm.
this and this, and the other doesn't do this and this. And, I would definitely be curious if they could avoid, some of the problems maybe that franchise fell into. I do know at one point, and I don't know if this was ever, like, a real thing, or if they were just kind of tossed around the idea. I think pretty sure at one point they wanted to do a prequel game about, like, her mom, and, like, the game would be about, like, her surviving to give birth at the end of the game. And if that was a potential, like, prequel that they could do in like live action, I would be very on board, and I'd be very down to see, like, what
Though
that would
we
look
did
like.
see that in the show.
That is true, though. I
We did.
guess.
That would
Yeah,
be,
that's fair.
I
That's fair.
that is
Is there
something
enough?
that, I mean, maybe
Yeah,
the and the her mother was played by the actress that
yeah.
played
Ashley
Ellie
Johnson.
in the
Yeah,
show, in the game.
that's a good
So
point. You're right.
I don't know. And I think what's fascinating about this to me, though, is the fact that I think HBO, Warner Brothers, or Max, as they call it now, which I refuse to call it, but as they've come up with this show, um, you're only able to tell like 2 or 3 seasons out of this storyline, at least from what the
Mhm.
games have given us, and it's become such a massive thing that I don't know, what I'm assuming that they are questioning what they're going to do with this property, because
Yeah.
it's an IP that, especially when the next season, like the next season is probably going to be even bigger than this season.
Mhm.
And now you're talking about, do we end this show before, you know, it it really takes off? Like, I mean,
Sure.
that's the thing right now. A lot of these series, a lot of these streaming services, and a lot of these networks, they're losing their shows. Like Stranger Things is ending, and
Yeah.
a number of, like, Game of Thrones had ended, so they need that next show,
Yeah.
and we don't know what they're gonna do with this franchise. But right now, if I'm telling you though, if Craig Mazin is involved, then there is, I
Yeah.
think, some hope, because he is a genius.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, like, if spin-off, and this goes for any show, like any movie ever, like, if it's good, yeah, I love it, right? And, like, what makes the, like, Last of Us so good are its characters, right? Like, the action is good, the, like, world is amazing, but we care about Joel and Ellie and their journey. and which is why so many people were mad about the like second game and what ends up
Mhm.
happening in the second game as well. I don't want to like
Yeah.
spoil it for people who are only watching the show, of course, but they're so passionate about these two. And could we get passionate about a spin-off about these other characters? And even like a reason why we love the show so much is too, or the people who played the game. Like we have that attachment from the game as well. Like these would be like completely new characters, I would assume, unless it's someone from the game that they're adapting, but I don't possibly know who that'd be. Alrighty. Let's move to our second topic here. So all of the Disney Plus Marvel shows have all been shifted. They've all been changed. Now I don't know if you've seen any of this news. Like we do a news story like this at least like once a month, it feels, where it's like, well, this thing's been moved to blah blah blah, and this has been moved to blah blah blah. But I am glad that we did get something, because like a lot of these shows, I don't know how you're currently feeling about like the MCU. There's a lot of talk with the MCU. Like there's a lot of different opinions from each person. Each person's feeling different. But we have an update on 7 of these shows and kind of what's happening. So first off, we have What If Season 2. Now, first season came out back in 2021. Each year, like we haven't really known what's been happening with the show, where it's going to fit into the larger Phase 5, Phase 6 kind of lineup. So season 2 has actually been pushed up to this December. So it's coming out this year now, around the Christmas date. Now, were you a fan of the first season at all?
Yeah, I
Or
was I was well, I'm a huge fan of the MCU, but I am
Mhm.
also a fan of What If. I thought that they delivered some of the best episodes, like the one with Doctor Strange. They did the one I
Yeah,
I actually was a fan of the Thor episode they did, Party Thor, and but like a number of those episodes were really good. The zombies, Marvel zombies.
hmm
I do think the show struggled at times with, I think, some of its episodes, like the one
yeah,
episode that revolved around Killmonger. I didn't
mm,
find it to really be that different than, all things considered, where the Black Panther story kind of ended up, and this one, I felt like some of these storylines, I think it was even Captain Carter, I thought was a little bit too similar to Captain
yeah,
America storyline. And that's why I liked, when we got to Marvel Zombies, and we got to when like Ultron,
yeah,
essentially took over the world. It was incredible.
yeah,
Took over like the galaxy, I think. But I mean, I was really happy to hear that it's gonna be released in December, because I'm not sure how much you're aware of like the merchandising and the toys they make, but
yeah.
I'm a big toy guy, and they actually have released some What If Season 2
hmm
Merc recently. What's on the way, I don't want to get into any spoilers, but
Sure.
there are some characters that they revealed already in the show. Like, we don't even have a trailer or anything, and it was because this show was originally supposed to come out earlier, I
Yeah, like
believe, this year, and because of that, things got delayed. So same with X-Men 97. X-Men 97
yes,
is another one I'm really excited for, and I believe that one isn't coming out till next year, which it was also
yes,
supposed to come out this year. So I'm looking forward to What If Season 2. I forgot. I think they did say some of the storylines. I think one of them has
yeah.
to do with Hela, but I'm really, like, I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to that Marvel Zombie show.
hmm
And we haven't heard much about that in a
We haven't heard
while.
nothing for a while.
We
Yeah.
just saw like the concept art they had, and it was like Shang-Chi and I think Darcy. Like, they're gonna be fighting
Yeah.
zombies, which I can't wait. Like, that one is, I think it's gonna be TVMA. That was like one of
It
the
is. Yeah.
reports. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like these like animated shows, like it feels like they don't quite know where to put them, or like how to almost make them. Like this and X-Men, and they have that like Spider-Man show, and they have zombies, and it's like they've all been announced for many years, and we haven't had any except for the first season of What If. So I would like to see them come out eventually, and I hope they do, and I hope season 2 is good. I think I pretty much agree with you. I had a really good time with the first season. Some didn't work for me, some really did. Just kind of like, I think it's just like what most of the MCU shows are for me. It's just kind of like a mixed bag of good and bad,
Yeah.
and all that jazz. I'm just glad it's finally coming out. Like it was supposed to come out like 2 years ago, and it just they kept pushing it back and pushing it back, and it's been done for like 2 years. Like it's been done for a while, so glad it's finally coming out. Next up here, I have Echo. So it has slightly been pushed back. It was supposed to come out in November, and they were going to drop all the episodes at once. Now it's set for January, so very early next year, the first project of 2024. Now this is a show for many reasons that's got a lot of hate by fans. A lot of people aren't crazy excited for it. I've personally been really I don't know if I'd say excited, but very curious about the show, because I do think if done right, it could be very cool. Thoughts on this show at all?
Yeah, so what's interesting about Echo, have you played the Spider-Man PS4 video game?
I have, yeah.
So they actually wrote a prequel to that game. They wrote a little like prequel novel, and it was called like Spider-Man Hostile Takeover.
Mm-hmm.
And it was entirely like focused on Echo and her relationship with
Oh,
Kingpin.
interesting.
Of course, she wasn't in the game, but they end up showing you how like the events of the game unfold. And I really urge anybody that's a fan of the PS4 game to pick up this novel, because it doesn't just go into like Echo, but it goes into the relationship between Harry and Peter. It goes into Mary Jane and Peter, and a lot of this stuff, when Spider-Man 2 comes out, we'll probably see some connections. But that's where I first became familiar with Maya Lopez, who is the name of the character. And I didn't even realize that she was the same character in Hawkeye until like a couple episodes in, and I was like, wait a second, Kingpin. Oh, wait, because it had been quite a while since I read that book, and I was like, I was so excited. So keeping that into perspective, I think she's a really wonderful character, and she, I think, was one of the highlights of Hawkeye, the series. I do think that the show missed the opportunity of focusing on her even more, because you focus on that whole relationship between her and her father. And I really love that, and how like Ronan affected her life. And I think that this show will give us the opportunity to learn more about her, and also learn more about Kingpin, learn more about the crime world, but most importantly, have Native American representation in
100%.
the MCU, which is something that I think a lot of people aren't really talking about when they talk about this show. They say, oh, Echo, because a lot of people, there were people that didn't like Hawkeye, and they might not have liked Echo, and they just like cast the show aside. But this show, I think, is a really important show to release. That being said, I'm very worried about the whole releasing all the episodes at once, because I feel like that's almost like Disney's just trying to bury the show and make people forget about it. And it might also be because the show isn't that good, and they want it to be released all at once, so that way, you know, every week they don't have to worry about like bad press or disappointments. So I'm a little bit nervous about that, and I'm nervous that when they delayed it, like when I heard them delaying Echo, I was like, okay, that's good, they'll delay it and then it'll be released week to week. But no, they're still sticking with the, you know.
I mean, I think a lot of it is just like people don't know who she is, and things that people don't know, people don't like. Like that's how it's always been. And it like people didn't know Iron Man like 15 years ago, and now he's like one of the most popular characters ever made. And that's why I always I ask people just to give stuff a chance. Like you may not like the show, or might not, want this to be a thing that you watch, but like give it like a one episode shot, give it just like
the
give it a
best
go.
the best example would be Peacemaker to me, because
100%.
if you watch,
Yeah.
the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker's a fun character in that film and all, but he
Hmm.
doesn't, like when you watch that movie, you're like, wait, they're gonna make a spin-off on this character? Then
100%.
you
Yeah.
watch Peacemaker, and it is, in my opinion,
It's
one of the
amazing.
best DC shows that have been
Yeah.
made. And it's like, one, never doubt James Gunn, and two, it's also a great example of you can make a great story out of any character. So
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I am worried that they apparently weren't like done with the show, and they were rushed while making it, but
Yeah.
they just had to finish because like the MCU thing is that you have to get this has to come out before this, then before this, before this. That's how they roll. So I'm definitely nervous. Hope it's better. Right, I hope it's good. Zooming through the rest of these, we have X-Men 97, which is early next year. If I had a guess, I would say like a March or April. I feel like that sounds about right for them. Agatha, Dark Code Diaries, which is their like new title, which man, the show's been kind of weird. Like I'm really excited for the show, but this is their third title, and they've now said they're doing it on purpose because you never know what you never know what she's going to do next. Like, she's always up to her trickery, and I was like, that kind of sounds like a cop out.
I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but someone made a joke where it's like, oh, it was like, oh, the VFX workers are being overworked. Just another example of Agatha's foolery. It's like, oh my goodness.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, no, I will say with this show, I mean, like, Agatha is probably one of the most beloved MCU characters as of late. But when I think of this show, it's like, this show is clearly a WandaVision season 2, but
Yeah.
because WandaVision was a limited series,
Yeah.
they can't continue WandaVision. So instead, they're just going to make the show Agatha. And it somewhat
100%.
feels like what they did, like when you'd have any famous like sitcom, like say if you had Cheers, and then they make Frasier. It's like, I mean, Echo's also a spinoff, but like, I think that personally, to me, I think there should have been a WandaVision season 2, like an actual
Sure.
WandaVision season 2, where it continued Wanda's journey. It brought back Vision, and we had, even I would argue, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think they could have gone into the animation route. So where the first season was like, based on sitcoms, this second season could be based on like G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Simpsons,
That'd be
and
cool.
that would have been, I think, fun. And I think it would have been a hit. And that's the thing I have an issue with when it comes to Disney Plus. They just don't do enough second seasons. All their shows feel like they're one and done, or they feel like they have no idea where they're going. I'm so excited for Loki season 2 because it gets to continue the story. And I think that all these shows, even the ones that I'm not that big on, like She-Hulk and even like Moon Knight, I think would even be really a big hit because they have so much material to continue. And I don't like the idea that we have a TV series and the only way we'll probably see these characters again is maybe a quick cameo in another movie instead of a season 2 or season 3 where we get more character development of said character. But I think that I'm still looking forward to Agatha because I love WandaVision so much, but I do wonder how that show will work, given that it's not like, also I wonder who's going to be in the show because we don't really, I think what I love is Aubrey Plaza, we know is going to be in the
I'm
show.
really excited for that.
So that's interesting, but will we see other cameos of other characters? Will we see, like I would love to see Darcy reappear.
Yeah.
So More Kat Dennings, please. More Kat Dennings.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I think a lot of that we've talked about on here for months now, and I think Secret Invasion really was kind of the, like, nail in the coffin for me, where I love TV. Like, TV is my realm. I love watching TV. And these, most of the time, as good as I, as much as I do enjoy them sometimes, most of them aren't TV shows. They are movies shoved into like 8 episodes. And like even the ones that are getting second seasons, you have to wait like 3-4 years for them to get a second season. It's been so long since Loki came out. I'm gonna have to rewatch the whole thing over again because I don't remember half the show. Like, I love that show so much. Like Loki and Miss Marvel and a lot of these shows, I want them to be these reoccurring shows. I'm a massive Agents of Shield fan. I'm
Me too.
currently ending my rewatch, and like I don't like to compare too often, but like what Agents of Shield does on like a quarter of these other shows' budgets to what these are doing are insane to me. Like, I want more like Agents of Shield, and I think
Even
Daredevil is
yeah.
like I think Daredevil was getting there. Like 18 episodes. They've even
Yeah.
talked already about a season 2. I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere with all this stuff.
But even like with not like Daredevil Born Again, but the original Daredevil, those Netflix series,
Yes.
13 episodes that were like sometimes over an hour long, that is what we need. And I do think that it is also the length of these shows that is the issue,
Very
because
short, yeah.
like 30-minute long episodes, like that's not an episode of television. That's and when it comes to like some of these shows that get into those 30 minutes, like the episode itself feels like half an episode. Not enough happens. Like, I'm loving Ahsoka.
Sure.
The last episode of Ahsoka is, I think, one of the
Oh,
best
so good.
episodes of Star Wars. But the episode prior to that, last week's episode, was like 30 minutes long. And I did a rewatch of it. I rewatched it right before the episode last night that aired. And I was like, this is half an episode. Literally, like, this is like the first act of
Yeah.
of an episode. So I do hope that, Disney learns, because that's the one thing with Andor. Andor had really long episodes that never felt like they were too short.
Yeah, I mean, I have a theory that just like they don't have showrunners and they don't have people at Marvel Studios who makes TV. They make people who make movies. So I think they film them like movies. Like, they have, all right, this is kind of where it ends, this is where it starts, this is the middle. They film it and then they break it up like TV shows. And that's why we'll have these like for like a 45 like this show it started with like 50 minute, then 30, and then 40, and it's like,
Yeah.
why? That's kind of a weird format.
I mean, some of these shows were like Obi-Wan Kenobi was originally, supposed to be a movie. And then they had the same screenwriter of that movie. They still, I believe, have his name under the screenplay for the series, and they had to get a new screenwriter in to change it up. And then they, of course, when they brought Deborah Chow onto the project, they made it more structured like a TV series. But you're absolutely right when you say like the way they plan these, they're not planning them like TV shows. And I think they almost, I want to say, took the wrong lessons from WandaVision, because WandaVision is designed to be 30 minutes or so because it's like an actual sitcom. But then I feel like they were like, oh, well, why don't we do this for every show? But that's not, like, Secret Invasion is not a show that you have short episodes. You need long episodes when you're doing a conspiracy thriller. So
6 episodes was not enough for that show. Not by a mile. Like, it felt like we were like at the halfway point.
Yeah.
And it's like, like, okay, like this is how you introduce the show. And it's like, oh, it's over? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And then our final 3 here, we have Ironheart, Daredevil Born Again, and Wonder Man. They're all pretty much paused, just kind of put on a break, which I think is good. Like, obviously we have the strikes going on. They don't, like, I think there's just a lot of like transfer of power over at Disney, them not really knowing what they're doing. As long as these all come out still and they're not just like shelved, because like, like these shows are not don't like Batgirl them. Don't just be like, all right, we're throwing you out. You know what I mean? I'm like Wonder Man. I'll be honest, that's not a character I know at all, so I'm excited to learn that character. Ironheart is the character I really enjoyed, but I think she's one where it's like, does she need a show? Could she just appear again in the movies? So I don't know.
Well, I will
But-
say that with Ironheart, it is produced by Coogler, so some of the Black Panther, I think, because I would argue that like both Black Panther films are somewhat of a gold standard when it comes to
agree.
Marvel, and if you can infuse a little bit of that magic into Ironheart. If you remember, there was like a Dora Milaje show they had talked about many years ago, and it's like, I want to see, like, this is a world like they want to keep, I think, in the movies, like Wakanda itself stays in movies, but it is such a rich world that they could really, I think, go deeper into it. And Ironheart, it's not technically, you know, part of Wakanda, but you do get to see, I think, what from what we've seen, and I think the set photos, they are going more into the magic element of Ironheart. And Anthony Ramos, who I love from In the Heights, he was recently in Transformers Rise of the Beasts. He's going to be playing the Hood, which is a Marvel character that is like magic like character. So I think that there's some interesting stuff, and I'm really looking forward to all those shows. Yaya is part of Wonder Man, I believe, and of course we have Daredevil Born Again, which is, I think, the one that all of us are the most excited for, because that is, though we're a little bit nervous about at the same time. True. So I can't believe they brought John Bernthal back as the Punisher. Like, how did they do that? So we'll have to see.
I think he's the one that gives me the most hope, because I don't think he would come back for nothing. Like, I think he had to make sure that he was doing Punisher again. Like, I don't think he's coming back for like a PG version of that character. I think they're fully doing it again. I really do.
Can I give you my theory about
go ahead.
What they're doing with him? I think he's going to die.
Ooh.
Because if you remember in season 2 of Daredevil, Kingpin says to him, or I forgot, it was either him or Kingpin, they say to the other, the next time we see each other, you know, it's not gonna be good. And I don't see how Frank Castle can exist within this MCU. I just don't, like, is he gonna just say, okay, I'm not gonna go after these villains? Like, I think that he might like have this giant sacrifice in the show where he maybe saves Matt and the Kingpin kills him or something like that, or he wins the day. I don't know. I mean, but I'd love, like, it'd be unbelievable, like, if he, you know, doesn't die and we get more Punisher throughout the MCU. But I don't know how they'll, you know, do that. He's such a really mature character to include within this storyline. But they're doing Deadpool, so maybe they will find a way.
I think that Deadpool and maybe Daredevil are their, like, testing the water projects to be like, are people okay with this? Can we have a little blood? Can we have a little gore? Like, Deadpool is like hard R. Like they are really going in, and like, I know some of their other projects, you know, like, I've heard people say that maybe a Blade sequel could be rated R, you know, all that kind of fun stuff in the future. And I think Marvel just has to make changes if they want to survive this current landscape, especially in like the superhero landscape, because I love these superhero movies. I'm a huge fan of that, all kind of stuff, but people are tired. I think people want something new, something fresh. And I think a whole sector of that can be rated R. And these superhero projects geared towards a bigger audience. And because like all of the kids that grew up on Iron Man are now in their 20s, they're all in their 30s, and they're ready to keep these stories, right? But maybe in a different genre. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as my friend says, people are tired of mediocrity. And especially after coming off of like the pandemic, and I think people being a little bit more choosy of what movies they go out to see, I think it's really important for these
Yeah.
films to not only look good, but also be good. Because it's now, we're not in a, like, Barbie is is the highest grossing film of the year. And I mean, that's a film that's the perfect example of something that's not just original, but something
Yeah.
that is really, truly incredible, like, and Oppenheimer is the same. And um, so, I mean, I personally think that we will see in the coming years, especially with the DCU and James Gunn, I think we're going to start to see a
Yes.
shift where we're going to get some really great comic book movies. And
Mhm.
I'm really hoping the Marvels is, fantastic,
Yeah.
because then I think, if a Deadpool is great, that'll be wonderful. And then we can get Joker 2, which I have no doubt will be fantastic. And then
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of good things on the way.
Sure. 100%. 100%. Moving on to our last kind of main topic here. Actually, no, we have two more. I'm sorry. So apparently the Sony Television Presence Studio says that multiple live action Marvel shows is a huge focus for their studio going forward. So so previously they had greenlit the Silk TV show, and also the Spider-Man Noir TV show. And like, listen, Sony Marvel has been a weird can of worms over these last couple years. It's been a weird batch of things, right? The Venom franchise, they let Morbius, Craven the Hunter is supposed to come out, but it's been weird. But I'll be honest, I'm very excited for these shows because I'm not sure if they're like supposed to be connected to like the Venom verse or if this is their own thing. But I'm excited to get some like properly interesting Marvel projects that aren't just tied to the MCU, right? Like with Marvel, it's like it's the MCU and that's it. We can't do any of these Elseworld projects really. Just basically the MCU and that's it. So hearing about like another Spider-Man from like another Earth, that's very interesting to me. Getting to see like a Silk. Like Silk is a very interesting character that people have been wanting to see for how many years. And I'd be very curious to see what other characters they have in like their arsenal that they would want to play with. I know there's been rumors of like a live action Miles Morales movie. There's been rumors of like a Gwen Stacy movie. What are your thoughts on this? Would you like to see more of these like Spider Sony characters?
It's funny you mention this, because you brought up a great point about the fact that we are going to see Marvel shows outside of the MCU. And
Yeah.
I think that is really important, because we need, as I think the brand itself, you can't always have every single thing on Disney
Mm-hmm.
Plus. You
Yeah.
really do need that variety. And like, if you look at some of the best shows that we've gotten, like an Agents of Shield, Legion,
Yeah.
um,
Gifted.
The Gifted, like these are shows that were like on FX Fox, and they really, I think, were wonderful series. The Runaways on Hulu. So
So good.
we really need, I think, this. So I'm really looking forward to it. I love Silk. I really cannot wait to see how they adapt her. I'm just nervous that it's Sony, because you
Yeah.
know, uh, I mean, their animation brand is
Amazing.
the
Yeah.
best, but I mean, we still don't have a Spider-Man in this Sony universe. So, like,
Yeah.
now, if they do Silk without Spider-Man, it's gonna get like,
Sure.
what's next? Are they just gonna have, a J. Jonah Jameson series, but instead of him, reporting about Spider-Man, he's talking about Mysterio or some random, bad guy? It's just like,
If you get J.K. Simmons, I'll watch it.
yeah. I mean, honestly, they could do like a Whiplash, and it's like J. Jonah Jameson, but now he's a band teacher, and Miles Teller returns as Reed Richards. I don't
know. No, yeah, I mean, again, like, I think a Sonyverse can work. Just assign a Spider-Man. Like I think after No Way Home, we have all accepted that there's a whole multiverse of Spider-Man now. Like, you just pick one. Pick literally if it's a Gwen, if it's a Miles, if it's a Peter. Like, Andrew Garfield wants to come back. Clearly, throw him in there if you really want. Pick someone new. There are literally billions of people that would love to play Spider-Man. Get someone new. I'm totally okay with that. I think we're about to. I don't want to say about to lose Tom Holland, but I think he's maybe on his way out. As in, with the next. I mean, I guess it depends. Like, I think Tom Holland's about done with like Hollywood. It seems, right. He's been kind of. I think he'll do like another trilogy maybe, and then I think he'll dip. But who knows?
Now, if that happens, do you think they would go back to former Spider-Man or try something new? Because I don't know, like, I feel what we haven't really gotten from Spider-Man is the older Spider-Man. Like, we got Toby. Toby was the closest. We need
college for sure. Yeah.
We got to, but I really think the one thing with Tom Holland is I think we could see him truly grow into the role where by the time we get to, say, the next 10 years, I don't know if I'm saying, like, he could be married, he could have a kid, and it could be something that we haven't seen, before. But I don't know. Like, Spider-Man's always a very unexpected brand.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to stay around, I would love to have him. I would love to do at least a whole nother like trilogy set in like the college era, and then maybe even like a fourth, like in that kind of era where he's older and he is like retiring and stuff. But I have a feeling he might do a couple more, and then they might do Miles, because I do think Miles is at like an all-time high. Like, I think everyone loves Miles now, which is cool. Already our last kind of news story here. We took longer than I thought. I do apologize. So everyone loves this man. We all love him. He's in Breaking Bad. He's in The Boys. He's in Once Upon a Time. He's in so many great shows. But apparently he had talked right before the strikes. He talked to James Gunn about a role in the DCU. Now, actors say this kind of stuff all the time. They're always like, I would like to play this person or this person, this person. But apparently he wants to play a hero and not a villain. Thank goodness. This man plays the perfect villain, but he needs something else, I think. It feels like every villain he plays is like Gus Fring. And he does an amazing job at that role. Like, he's phenomenal. Like, if he hadn't played every villain ever made, I would say Lex Luthor. Like, he'd kill it as Lex Luthor.
Yeah, that was my first. When I heard it, that was my first prediction. I was like, is that Lex? I think he might be a little bit too old to play Lex. Yeah. Because Lex is the type of character that you want to go on for as long as Superman. Like, you 100%. Don't want to have a situation. I mean, what they could do, because in the comics they did this, where Lex Luthor dies and he has a son, but it's his actual brain hooked into a clone, and they could have like a younger actor play the part. But I do think that they want, I believe, like, some of the rumors were like a Stellan Skarsgård or a so like that would really, I think, be their benefit. But Giancarlo, I mean, he has so many great performances. So like, I could see him playing Brainiac. I could see him playing, one of my friends said he could be playing Perry White, which I could see it. Fun. Yeah, I could see it. But I mean, we'll have to see. I don't even know if, like, we're kind of thinking of like, Superman characters, but he could even be, for all we know, Hugo Strange, or someone else in the DC universe, like a Commissioner Gordon. Like, that would be. Ooh.
An Alfred would be kind of fun.
I think you need to be British to be Alfred.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I've heard a lot of
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people throw in like a Martian Manhunter. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be completely against that. I could definitely see that. Like Martian Manhunter is definitely usually played by like the older side. Not to say he's old, but like, you know, that mid 40s, 50s type era. So yeah, I mean, I want him in here somewhere because he's so good. He's such a great performer, and he's always so passionate about every role he plays. If it's more, or if it's the, you know, like Breaking Bad, if it's Star Wars, if it's whatever it is, it's always so fun to watch him play. So absolutely. With that being said, though, I think it's time that we dive into my adventures with Superman. So, the first season of My Adventures with Superman officially dropped, or I guess officially came out over the weekend. Episode 10, the season finale. Kind of right off the bat, man. What were your kind of thoughts on just the show as a whole?
So as a whole, I will say that this is one of my favorite Superman shows / content I've seen. I mean, I think that with this show, it not only delivered a nearly perfect season of like comic book TV, but of like just television in general, because you got to really sink your teeth into all of these characters. And I think what I love so much about this show was how fun it was. Like, it's not one of those shows where, you know, you watch it and it really gets into some dark elements and, you know, gets you down a bit. I really love Superman and Lois. It's a wonderful series. But I will say my dad was not too happy with this past season of Superman and Lois, because he didn't think it was as fun, like as like he really wants Superman to have, like, say, because he grew up with like the George Reeves Superman, and you had a lot more, you know, okay, I'm gonna go save the world and do this and that. But Superman and Lois season 3 was very dark at times, and
it was.
I personally thought it was the best season of Superman and Lois. But I do think that what this show does is it's a perfect way to counter the darkness in Superman and give us some of the light. And what we got with this season of My Adventures with Superman, it's just this joyous show with unbelievably beautiful, like, animation, colors, the palette. I mean, even the characters themselves all look distinctly different from each other. Like, you have Lois in her green jacket, and then you have Jimmy with his blue jacket, and they just look so good together. And it's just such a, I think, a respectful show of the Superman lore and the background, because like even when I'm watching, like I did a rewatch today, and I was like, oh my god, look at how many Easter eggs that you can pick apart. There's an Easter egg of creators like John Byrne, Dan Jurgens. You even get some other Easter eggs that involve DC lore itself. So like there was a Starro reference. There was a reference to Gotham, Falcone. You had a Green
Dr.
Arrow
Fate,
reference. It's like, it's so, and I just love it so much. What were your thoughts on the season as a whole?
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved this show, and like this show was such a long time coming. Like, we had seen that one still for like 3 years, and we're like, like they announced this show, and then they announced like Batman show, which still isn't here either. Like, we don't know when that's coming out either. I think next year. I don't know.
That's not even gonna be on like
it's on Amazon now.
It's gonna be, it was shopped to Amazon. So but hopefully that goes well, because I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I mean, it kind of came to a point that like a lot of my friends were like, I don't think it's happening anymore. Like, I think it's done, dude. And it's like, no, I think it's still coming out. They haven't said it's not happening. And then, obviously it's Journey, where like it went to like Adult Swim instead of like Cartoon Network, which at first I'm like, like having now seen the show, it's like the least Adult Swim show that could ever exist. Like it next to like Rick and Morty and like their whole other like catalog of shows. It's very silly, right? But I'm so happy that it's out, and I'm so happy that we've seen it, and I'm so happy that so many people are happy about it because like I love Superman and Lois. That's one of my favorite shows ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that show was so heartbreaking to me because I think it's one of the greatest shows that people aren't watching. Right?
Yeah.
Like week after week, it's doing some of the best Superman stuff ever. And I was like, if you
Especially
like Superman,
season 3, right?
oh,
Because
they did.
season
It's so
3,
good. Yeah,
the stuff they did with Intergang, Bruno Mannheim, and even like when you had Lois and I really don't want to spoil anything in season 3 because
yeah,
but Lois goes through, let's just say Lois has a huge storyline that season,
yes.
and I think it's a really interesting reverse of what they kind of do in All-Star Superman, and I think that was really, really smart, and it it honestly was one of the most emotional seasons of CW television we had
Oh,
seen.
it's
You're so right
yeah.
about it being underappreciated. I personally though, like Superman Lois, I did not really care for season 2 that much.
Season two
I
was
thought it
definitely a
was
step down.
I
Yeah,
thought it was a step down, and I was a little bit afraid with season 3. I was like, what are they gonna do here? And thankfully they came through.
yeah.
But I think
They
what
pulled it
this
back.
show, My Adventures, does is that I feel what we're seeing now with Superman and Lois and now My Adventures, we're seeing the reintroduction of Superman into the pop culture through
100%.
television, through live action TV and through animation. And I think that is massively important when Superman Legacy comes out because
100%.
we're going to get to see audiences. Like, I guarantee you, there are a number of people that have now become fans of Superman because of My Adventures. And
100%.
we're going to see that come into play when the new Superman movie is released.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited. It's a great time to be a Superman fan.
100%. I think I I have some I don't know how I want to say this. Like I people's opinions on Superman have definitely been jaded over the last decade or so when
You
it
don't
comes to like
say.
if it I don't want to get into my opinions on a certain Superman, but just like Injustice Superman and Homelander and like Omni-Man
Yeah.
and all these different evil or darker Supermans, like like Henry Cavill did a lot of great things with Superman, but he personally wasn't my Superman. He wasn't my all-time favorite Superman. And I think you're 100% right. Like I think they are slowly reintroducing what Superman is. And like for the longest time that people have placed the question, what does Superman look like in current day? And now I think we've had two shows that have proven, well, this is what he looks like, and this is what he can be like. And I'm going to be so curious how people take Superman Legacy because like now I almost think there's even a higher standard. Like the like standards were so low like 5 years ago where there was nothing. And you could I think you could make almost any Superman movie and people would be like, oh, this is amazing because of how just like the lack of Superman there was. So I'm gonna be very curious how James Gunn does it, like what puts his version apart from Tyler Hoechlin, from Jack Quaid, from Henry Cavill, all that
Can
kind
I
of stuff.
just say though that I couldn't be happier that we're actually going to get a Superman that doesn't look like this. The whole movie. I don't know if that could pick it up on here, but as I'm trying to explain, we have not seen Superman's head since
Oh,
2000,
okay.
since
I
like
was like, what are you
2017.
doing? You're
See,
right. Yeah,
your
he actually has
reaction
a
was my
face.
reaction when I watched the end of Shazam 2019 because it is still, in my opinion, I think one of the worst endings to a superhero movie because
Ooh,
the fact that they couldn't get Henry Cavill
yeah.
to play, Superman in that one scene, and it's a headless Superman. Like, I do feel like there will be some kids that watch it that don't know who that is. Like, I don't know. Like, it was frustrating to me, but I do love Shazam 2019.
Yeah.
I will say that with, I think, Superman himself, he's a character that is like really the foundational superhero. Like, when we look at going back to 1938 when he was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, you go into a character that has been around for so long that he's a character that a lot of people have their own differing opinions on.
100%.
And it's something that I do wonder when we get to Superman Legacy, how the audience will react to that, whatever is given. Because right now there are fans that, I mean, it's funny how in a matter of like 10 years, we now have a new set of Superman fans. We have the Zack Snyder Superman fans. And a lot of them, some of them are unhappy that we're going to see, you know, a Superman that isn't Zack Snyder's Superman. And it's funny because I was watching a wonderful interview a couple weeks ago with Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer, where Zack Snyder himself was telling them how the importance of these characters cannot be understated, and the fact that when you're making music for these characters, you have to understand that you're part of a legacy of these characters, and there will always be a new version of said character. There will always be a new music attributed to that character, and I think that we as like a fandom, we also have to get ready for the new version of the character. I personally love Man of Steel. It is my favorite Superman movie, and I still cannot wait to see what they do with Superman Legacy, because I really do want to see what we get from My Adventures. I want to see that put to screen, because not necessarily the same Superman, the same story, but the feeling we get watching My Adventures is like, wow, it's like almost a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen this in a while. And now to actually see Superman and to see Jimmy Olsen, because
it's been so
oh my
long.
God, where is he in Superman Lois? Is he okay? Is he all right? Like, it's just, I'm so happy to see him as a fundamental part of the Superman story. I was watching many interviews where they were talking about how it's called My Adventures with Superman. And it's like, who does that apply to? That applies to both Jimmy and Lois.
100%.
And it's just as much their story as it is Clark's.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's why it works. And what I love, like, this, it's such an interesting mix, because this show, it follows a lot of the things we've seen with Superman before, but it like puts it in different orders, right? Like, we start with Lois and Clark, and Lois knowing Jimmy, and like Clark knowing Jimmy, and like him working at like the like Daily Planet and all that kind of fun stuff. But then we haven't even tapped into him like learning to use his powers, Zod, like him knowing his father and learning his roots, and that makes it like, just switching it up a little bit makes it feel so fresh and original, while also being like, yeah, this is Superman. Like, this is the Superman I love. And I do love how it is, again, Man of Steel, it is a very good movie. But one of the things I was kind of missing is I do love Clark Kent. And this show is Clark Kent first. He isn't even really Superman yet. He's just Clark Kent. And that's the world that we follow. And we do follow, his life with Lois and Jimmy, and it, again, you're so right. It's so nice to have Jimmy again. Like, I like Supergirl, but that's not Jimmy. That's James. And Superman and Lois was a really difficult like situation, because obviously they were originally connected to the Arrowverse, and they couldn't get that James back. So they're like, all right, we just don't use him. But now it's disconnected, so it's like, oh yeah, bring him in. Just
I'm
bring one
still
on.
like, Supergirl did end, but I'm still upset that they never even referenced Supergirl in Superman and Lois. But then the way that things worked out, they had to actually separate Superman and Lois from the Arrowverse itself. So that's all in all. But man, like, like we could have had the perfect, Superman show, and Melissa could have been on there, and she could have guest starred, and but that being said, your point about Clark and how he's Clark first. What I really love about this Superman is that he's Clark when he's Superman, because when you're watching him, like, usually, well, at least what Christopher Reeve did was he would be, Clark Kent, a mild-mannered reporter, and then he'd be Superman. Hello, Lois. But here, Superman, I think, is just as unsure of himself as Clark Kent is. And there's, like, just, I mean, I love seeing that. I love seeing how Clark Kent is really in this suit, but you can see this is the same exact guy that when he's at the Daily Planet, he's still unsure. I mean, whether to ask Lois out on a date, which, oh my God, I loved. It was so cute. It was, I mean, we hadn't really seen that when it comes to Superman. Usually, I mean, with Man of Steel, they had her like meet him right away, and there wasn't that, sense of awkwardness in like the original Christopher Reeve films, like they had met each other a bit, but here the fact that you're seeing in an animated series, nonetheless, just a guy crushing on a girl and the girl crushing on the guy, in such an innocent and cute
it's so
way.
Adorable. I titled this whole stream, I titled it, is My Adventures with Superman DC's Most Adorable Series. And it's so cute. It's so adorable. And, like a couple of months ago, I had heard a lot of talk about, like, where is the love in these superhero stories? And especially if you look at, especially like the MCU and a lot of these big, like, blockbusters, like, there aren't a lot of, like, shipping, and there's not a lot of, like, like, these, like, love being formed. And, that's something that, like, the, like, CW shows would do a lot, but it's so just nice to see just new characters that like each other, and they are just so adorable. I love them so much.
I'm reminded of one of the funniest scenes, and I laughed so hard on my rewatch when Jimmy was saying how he knew that Clark was Superman the whole time. And
so
there's this one thing in Jack Quaid. Oh, he's so good.
He's so good. Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, Clark, you you told me that the screw was loose on the bathroom, and that's how I knew you were Superman." And then he's like, well, the screw could have been loose. It was ripped off. And just the look on his face, it was like, oh man. Speaking of the actors, so Jack Quaid, I think you tweeted that he's like in the top 5, greatest Supermans. I would agree, but would it be crazy if I said that Alice Lee is quite possibly the best Lois Lane there ever was?
Ooh. She's really good. She is really good. And what I think is very interesting. Good. So, okay. So I was watching the, like, Real Rejects' like reactions to it, and I thought they were amazing. And like one of the things that they said very early on is, like, they didn't like Lois as much because she isn't as competent as she usually is as Lois Lane. But by episode 5 or 6, when she gets to see all the other Lois Lanes, and it's like, oh no, that was a purpose choice. This is a Lois Lane that isn't at the par that all the other Lois Lanes are. Like, Lois Lane is known for being one of the, like, the most, like, badass DC characters ever. Like, she doesn't have powers in the world, but she still stands like toe to toe with everyone else. And this Lois Lane who's like, she already knows about Superman. She already knows about the freaking multiverse, and she's just not yet on that level of everyone else. And I'm so excited to see her journey to get there, because I know that she is like she's going to make that journey someday, and I'm so ready.
Something that I heard from one of the producers, Josephine Campbell, in this amazing interview I listened to, she talked about how in the beginning of the show, Lois Lane idolizes Vicky Vale, and it is so brilliantly done that they actually put a picture of Vicky Vale in Lois Lane's apartment, and it's in episode 1, and I think it's in a later episode 2, but like you'll miss it, like especially if you're watching week to week, you forget about details like that. And then you see in episode 1, or 1A as I think we like to call it, because that's kind of how it's listed, you have Lois Lane lying. She's not telling Superman, Clark, or Jimmy the truth. She's saying that she's going after the story, but really, she's specifically trying to discover these robots and trying to find out what's going on. And like you see this back and forth between Clark saying, Lois, you shouldn't be doing this. And then when we get to see Vicky Vale does the same thing. And she's lying to Lois, and she's doing this. And Lois realizes that this isn't the type of reporter she wants to be. And she would rather, not be this famous reporter as long as she sticks to her own values. And I think that, honestly, when it comes to development with Lois Lane's character in media, I don't think we've ever seen that. Because usually Lois Lane is already the reporter, that we get that is, as you could say, competent and all that. But I think that to see this character really develop throughout this season, it is a really well written portrayal of her, and she's very much Lois Lane too. Like you see her becoming the Lois Lane that we really recognize. And I really think that Alice Lee, her performance is just so endearing, and also just really, really great. And my personal favorite Lois Lane is Dana Delaney from the animated series. And but yeah, like she's right up there for me. And so is Jimmy. I think
Jimmy's really good.
So good. He has some really funny scenes. And his whole flame bird, approach.
And now he's rich.
Yeah. he sold it for like $5.6 million.
Which was a great twist. I was like, okay, like what possibly could this news be? And that was the last thing I would have expected. It's so good.
I don't know, in that episode, you hear a cat in the episode when he's in the finale, when he says, like, I'm now a millionaire. And I don't know if I'm reading into this too much, but in Superman Earth 1 Volume 2, which was written, they introduced a cat. Like Superman had a cat. And I do wonder, I think the cat was named like Fuzzball or something like that. And I do wonder if that was the same cat. Because I don't know, like when we got to episode, I think it was episode 9, when 0 Day Part 2, when you saw like the Twitch stream, but it was like for Flamebird, there were so many Easter eggs in there, in the comment section, that, oh my god, there was one Easter egg of Bibbo, who in Superman comics, he's like the super fan. He's like a really big fan of Superman. And then they had another reference, but it was like a quick one, I think, to Lana Lang. And then the one that made me burst out in tears was it said Steve Lombard. And he said, I'm moving to Gotham. Enough of these kaiju monsters or something.
Oh gosh.
He was so
There's
funny.
a whole like audience of people now that really want to see Batman Batman next season. And I can't even imagine what a Batman in this world is like.
I saw when it comes to the Superman fan base, like there's divisions. There are people that don't want to see Batman because to them, Batman kind of takes away from Superman. Like you want to have a Superman story. And that was, I think, one of the big criticisms of BVS when that came out. You had a Man of Steel sequel, but then Batman kind of took it over. And I think personally for me, what has really worked with this show was how unpredictable it was. 100%. And the fact that we got the multiverse in the first season.
In episode 6. That's like, insane.
That's we got like a Superman crab in that episode, and it's like I love this. And I personally think if you introduce Batman, you do it in the most unpredictable way possible. And it could be in a second season, but as long as you focus on Superman, which I think they will do, I think you will be good. I don't know about Supergirl. Supergirl's one that they have batted around.
A lot of people want to see Supergirl. Yeah.
I think you wait. I think she's a character that appears a couple, like maybe season 3. Like, because Clark still doesn't know, you know, about Krypton. So, I mean, unless she comes down and she's the one that teaches him about Krypton. That would be interesting.
I kind of like the idea that she came first. Like, she's been on Earth for a while, but, like, in hiding from, like, everyone. And then Clark comes, and then, like, you know, like, this is a story that we've seen a lot before, but, like, she teaches Clark about Krypton, and then Clark teaches Kara about Earth and what that means. And I think that could be a really fun story and a good twist on everything. And I know potentially we're getting Brainiac for season 2, so maybe that make for a good segue into season 3. Could be kind of fun. But yeah, no, I do think season 2 is too early though. Like, I know a lot of people wanted them to end the season with Kara, and I was like, that, like, he's still very new to all of this. Let him settle in a little bit.
I do think that when it comes to season 2, I think it's almost like the second half of this season, right? Because the way they kind of worked on them both at the same time, I believe.
Yeah.
So this is a story that, like, I had a friend that thought there were several unanswered questions to this season, and I think that those will go into season 2. I think that the one of the things they wanted to do, the showrunners wanted to do with this show, was they didn't want Superman to learn about Krypton through Jor-El, because that's usually how he learns in every incarnation. And I think that was a really smart idea, because it allowed for Superman, once again going back to your like Clark first, it allowed for the humanity of Superman to come first in this storyline, and then he'll learn about his alien self. And I think that was really, really interesting.
100%. Yeah, I'm actually very curious where we take, like, Jor-El into season 2, because obviously, like, I love the aspect of, like, Clark and Jor-El can't understand each other yet. So, like, they know each other exists, but Clark doesn't even know that's his father. Like, he just think it's some, like, alien species that's trying to, like, take over the world, and it's just him being like, oh, good grief, he can't even understand me. And that's such a good, that's just like such a great twist. And again, like, I think the show does a very good job at, like, of course, doing the, like, Superman origin, but then just, like, mixing it all around and putting, like, this at the end of his story, and putting like what would normally be season 5, let's put this let's put this at the beginning of the season instead. It's so good.
It feels very comic booky too, because when you look at comic books, sometimes they have like All-Star Superman's a great example, where like All-Star Superman it has similar things that you would imagine, but then all of a sudden they introduce um like other superpowered characters coming into the storyline, and it's like this zany um comic series. Another one was Superman Secret Origin, I believe, and that one, the Legion of Superheroes appear from the future, and it's like that's part of Superman's own um origin, how they teach him. And that's what this felt like to me. It felt like, like that fourth issue of a comic where they just do something completely out of left field, but it also informs the character. And this is something they can't do on like in a live action show. They couldn't really adapt, Mitz in
Yeah.
this way. It was specifically animated, and like the kaiju, like to see Ivo slash Parasite turn into this gigantic kaiju. It's like this is what I've been missing. Like I want to see this. Like this is
Yeah.
amazing.
Kind of speaking of that, like I think one of the main issues a lot of people have from the show is just its villains, and
Mm.
they definitely took a lot of our DC villains and made them more mechy than like normal and gave them a lot of like weapons. Now this wasn't something that personally bothered me too much. Was this something that you had like an issue with at all?
Not at all. I actually really enjoyed it because I got to see these villains in a different light, and it
Yeah,
didn't feel like it was the same story that we'd been, accustomed to. And it made it more fun, I thought, because I was like every week, I when that first episode aired, I had no idea that was Slade until I
yeah,
went on to, um, social media to see people talking about it. Because
yeah,
I was like, this guy that has, he looks like he came out of Castlevania or some other, anime series. And sure enough, like it, every episode they found a way to change up the way you see these villains. And
yeah,
I just think that, some of these I can understand, because I do think that some people were upset that like every villain was a mech.
yeah,
But I think I think think some Superman fans might be a little bit too, um focused on keeping it like it originally looked,
yeah.
where I think you have to let yourself be open to
Yeah.
something that changes. And I really liked it. I don't think they will all be mechs though, because I think
No.
the reason why this was the case was because it was the Kryptonian slash, I think, Brainiac technology that
Yeah.
they were using. And I think if we get to a villain like, Metallo, maybe he wouldn't be a mech
Sure.
suit. They could, change that up. But who knows? Maybe if they want to do that, they will all be mechs and all be kaiju. And as long
Yeah.
as the action is great, that's what I'm happy about. Because man, when Superman's like when you see Ivo and him face off, and he's like, "What are you supposed to be?" And he's like, "Haven't you read the news?" And then he shoots right through
It's
him.
so good.
It's just,
Yeah.
I'm Superman. I'm like, yeah, that's my Superman.
Yeah. 100%. Like, like I definitely get it, and I definitely understand that it can be very like a very jarring thing for many people, and change is hard. Like it is a hard thing. But I do think if you go into it looking at like these are adaptations of these villains that I like. And it like almost became like a like treasure hunt to be like, okay, which
Yeah,
villain is this one supposed to be? And then they would be like, what is this? Some kind of heat wave? And it's like, they said the thing, you know what I mean? And it does kind of become that. And I think there are some villains that they haven't like revealed yet. Like I think Alex is probably going to be Lex at some
yeah.
point. I think they definitely threw him in there to be like, will people catch on, or do we have to wait until season 2? So I definitely think, and I definitely agree with you that it is like a season 1 thing. Like I doubt season 2 will have, like I don't think we'll get like a mech Lobo or something. Like I think they'll probably steer clear after season 2 or
and
whatever.
watch Batman just be a mech himself.
He's just a robot. Oh gosh.
I don't know if I mean, we can discuss season 2, but I personally want to see this show go into the DC universe. Like, I want this show to be the the new version of what the Justice League
Ooh,
animated
interesting.
series was back in the day, where we get to see other characters from the DC universe in this new animated universe, because this isn't part of the DCU, and I think that would be to its benefit, because I really think, like, right now, Jack Quaid is I mean, this whole world is perfect to me, and to see a new DC universe in this
Yeah.
world would be great. And I mean, if they want, they could even spin it off, and
Yeah.
like, I would die for a Flash animated
Oh,
series,
yes,
or
100%.
Wonder Woman animated series. I don't know if they could do that when they have other DCU projects, but
Yeah.
it would be so great to see some of these great characters get animated series that we've never gotten before.
100%. Yeah. And even just like within the like DCU, I think that's what we're doing. Like I like they've definitely talked about going in and out of like animation to like live action to video games. I don't know how video games are going to work exactly, but like animation, I'm definitely very excited for. Like again, a like Flash movie in that medium is something I want so bad, because I think that would look so good. Like a Plastic Man, a like Doctor
Oh,
Fate, all those guys. Oh, so good, so unbelievably
and it
good. I
wouldn't be hindered by like CW special effects. Like,
Yeah.
listen, I love the CW Arrowverse, but
Yeah.
those that those last few seasons of Supergirl
Yeah.
were rough. Like,
Yeah.
I I would actually videotape and record some of the scenes just to show my friends, because I
Oh
couldn't believe
gosh.
how poor, like, in terms of, like, there was like this one episode where Supergirl caught a bullet, and the entire scene looked like it was, shot out of a 2000s early video game. It just,
Yeah.
none of it looked real, and animation doesn't have that factor. These
Mhm.
characters, as we've seen with like Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, we've seen that they can, as long as the scripts are good and as long as the
Yeah.
story's there, they can tell some incredible animated stories. And please, like, listen, I I grew up on like the animated movies like Mask of the Phantasm and all
Mhm.
these, but lately I found that the DC animated films have been too focused on just being the same comic books that they're based off of. Like, they make a
Mm.
Batman Long Halloween, and it's like, I understand you're making that comic into an animated format, but I would rather you tell a brand new story through maybe some inspiration of that comic, kind of like what they did with the Batman. And what My Adventures does, which I love,
Yeah.
is it takes several different elements. Like, even when um um like Superman has this scene in the first episode or so when he's a little boy, Clark Kent, and he says, "I just, I want to be your son." And his mother's like, "You are our son," just like it's from Man of Steel, but it's not in a way copying it where it's just
Yeah.
telling you the same stories, taking elements from every Superman story, like Lois Lane falling off a roof. Like, it's taking these elements, but it's not
Yeah.
doing it in a way that feels like it's a complete copy of the other. And that's what I really do love.
100%. Yeah. I do want to kind of like, you asked about like the like larger DC universe. Like what are some other like DC heroes that you think would fit in this world well?
I would say, um, well, I mean, Batman, of course. I think with Batman,
Yeah.
like I really don't think you can have a Superman story without Batman being some part of that story, because they're
Yeah.
night and day. Like they really work well against each other. But I mean, as I said, like Wonder Woman, you could even I could see Hawkman or Hawkgirl
Ooh, that'd be fun.
be involved here, and like they could show up, right? They could show up and they could be in like one episode, and you learn about Thanagar. And
Yeah.
it's not like, when it comes to any other superhero show, you can introduce these characters the way they introduced them in the first season, where we get to see characters like um, the League of Lois Lanes, which I loved,
Yeah.
or you know, um, I mean, of course, most of it was Superman villains, but I mean, Vicky Vale showed up, and I love it. Vicky Vale showed up, so
Yeah.
there is Gotham. What I mean, Falcone. They
Yeah.
mentioned the Queen Industries inheritance scandal.
Ooh. Green
So
Arrow would actually fit in this world really well, I think.
yeah, um, Black
Anime Green
Canary.
Arrow. Oh yes.
Oh, please give us Green Arrow and Black Canary.
They'd be very cool here, I think.
Who do
Ooh,
you
I
think
think
could fit in?
I mean I think for next season I think Martian Manhunter next season would fit in
Mm,
very well. Because I think like to further explore Clark being like like my home's somewhere out there. Like I exist somewhere. I think, doing what you did with like Man of Tomorrow, I think is what the movie's called, where Clark is learning about his past at the same time as Martian Manhunter showing up, and he lost his home as well, and he lost his family, and he's coming to Earth. I think that could be very cool.
do you think
Um,
that he would be? Because like the last two versions of live action Martian Manhunter we've seen,
mm,
they've impersonated like a man of
ooh,
authority, like a general or a. Do you think that this would be the same with a Martian Manhunter, or would he be like just a random citizen, maybe a
yeah,
detective? Like
and,
I would like to see that more, because I feel like that was starting to overstay its welcome. I'm
yeah,
like, okay, I get it, Martian Manhunter. He can shapeshift, but he can shapeshift into other positions.
yeah,
Like he doesn't have to always be, the general.
governmental, yeah.
He can be like that'd be crazy if it was like Perry White was Martian Manhunter, or
I was just thinking like
Jimmy
Amanda
Olsen.
Waller. He's just like,
Oh man,
actually, it was me the
task
whole
force.
time. Oh, that'd be crazy.
Oh,
Um,
we haven't discussed though Task Force X,
we
because
didn't.
that's
No.
another element of the DC universe that I
Hmm.
like.
I was
Episode
not expecting. like
Not at
like
all.
going into the show, like
In
I
episode
wasn't.
9, like it really goes into um that's like a Suicide Squad episode, by having
Yeah.
them with the bombs on their necks, or at least shock collars on their necks, going after Superman getting sent out of like a plane.
Hmm.
It's like that's Suicide Squad. So we somewhat got our own little Suicide Squad animated
Yeah.
episode, which I love. So I mean that's another part of this that I thought was interesting. Amanda Waller, I thought it was interesting to see her as like a younger woman, and you saw her as part of Zero Day, and he
Hmm.
called her Mandy. So that was a unique way of showcasing her. But yeah, like I really think that um the DC universe, like with my adventures, we have the, I think, potential to see a really really fun DC universe in animation.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen that since the Justice League animated series, like back
Yeah.
in 2003, 2004. It's been a long time. I mean, we've had our own shows like, um, I mean, Teen Titans and such, but like we haven't really had that DC universe in
Yeah.
television, in animation. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely, I'm definitely not against if you want to like expand and go further. As long as it's not like overdone. Like
Yeah.
like I do think a lot of the time, especially nowadays, it's like we have to turn everything into a franchise and to
Hmm.
this long thing. And again, I like that stuff. I always do. But, like have the show come first. If you do want to expand, if you do want to do a Batman show or a like a Martian Manhunter show or something like that, I'm totally okay with that. But I would just say like take your time. Like I wouldn't want Batman next season. Like
Hmm.
Batman's like a season 3, 4, 5 type of thing. Like again, start like with like Legion of Superheroes. Start with like a, I don't know, like a, like a Martian Manhunter. Maybe like a Hawk Girl. Like start small and then make your way out. I think for sure.
I
Uh,
really, I really, I've heard throughout many people saying this, but I do think you have to keep it centered on Superman because right now,
mhm,
even Superman and Lois, I felt like one of the things that I kind of didn't love was the fact that it sometimes felt as if the supporting characters of the show took over the show.
mhm,
Um, like the stuff with Lana and Kyle and Superman and Lois. I got very bored of it. Season 3, I think, really stepped it up and made me appreciate it more. But
mhm,
I was like, I want Superman to be the focus. I don't want
yeah,
us to have a situation where, you're focusing on Perry White or Cat
sure.
Grant for the majority of the season.
The whole
I
episode,
also
yeah.
want Superman to like win his battles by himself
Mhm.
because as we've seen in Supergirl, Superman and Lois, we've seen Superman get assisted by a lot of other characters and we hadn't quite seen him fight in that one episode, 0 Day Part 2. He just takes down all the Task Force X people
Yeah.
except for Parasite. I'm like, yeah, like I want him to like, really beat him up.
Yeah.
So
That's fair. That's fair for sure. I think it's always hard when like these like CW shows, I love them to death. But I definitely like it's hard to make these shows on a budget. And I think what they do on their budget, normally is
mhm.
pretty solid. I think Super and Lois does a pretty good job. But I do think like one of the like some of that downside is sometimes they have to get knocked out. Sometimes Clark has to lose a couple battles here and there.
Mhm.
Um, I've heard this going around. I don't think that it could work if they really wanted to, but I think the style of these two shows I think would be so drastically different. It would
Yeah,
be hard to make that work
and
because
you have
like
to
this,
also have to understand too they are made by completely different people.
yeah,
So it's not like when we have um yeah, because back in the Justice League animated series,
they were all made by the
they
same
they were
group.
all made by
Yeah,
like Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, like they were all connected. Where here, the scary thing is if you do say that they're part of the same world, then you have to like, what if they connect? Like the animation style for Cape Crusader, I think, is
it
going
would
to
be
look
very
entirely
hard.
different
Yeah,
from My Adventures, and it's not like Spider Verse where that works because you're talking about a multiverse.
yeah,
Here, it it might not work as well. But who knows?
hmm
Like, I mean, I just really think that I hope that we get like multiple different shows
yeah,
where we get a Harley Quinn, we get
hmm
a Cape Crusader, we get My Adventures, and they all have
yeah,
their own little worlds. Because that Batman and Harley Quinn, I don't want to see in
yeah. That wouldn't
Cape
work.
Crusader. That Tim, that Tim Drake, Damian Wayne. I don't want to see these characters in Cape
Yeah,
Crusader the way they're depicted. So, um, like I think that it won't be connected, and I
yeah.
think, as we said at the top, though, I think Cape Crusader is going to be
To be
great.
really good.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that was I mean, that's I'm pretty sure one of Kevin Conroy's last projects is Batman, I think.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about that. I think he is Thomas Wayne in that one.
Is he Thomas Wayne? Okay, yeah.
I think he might be. I don't know if he did complete it though. I'm unsure
Oh
of that.
yeah. It it would be very hard. Like it would have
Oh,
sucked
that'd
if
be
he
fun.
like I almost wish he did Batman there. How great of like a send off like would it have been if that was his last project as Batman, a show that is supposed to like honor the original Batman show. Like
Well,
it would have
I
been
think if he is Thomas Wayne, that is where we get to see it honor it, because
yeah.
it reminds me of the episode of Batman the Animated Series of like Beware the Gray Ghost. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was the name of it, where Adam West was in it,
Aw.
and he played the hero, the childhood hero of Batman.
That's
And
cool.
you had Kevin Conroy and Adam West interact in this episode. I would love to see if Thomas Wayne, he has, Kevin Conroy has, because oh my god, now that would be, then it would say, in loving memory of Kevin Conroy, and his
Yeah.
last project would be a Batman animated series
Yeah.
that would, give us the
Inspired
next
show.
one.
Yeah.
Because I mean, of course, if he played Batman in that, then he would have to be recast in the second
Yeah.
season. And, yeah.
That would really suck. Yeah.
So we'll see. I think that DC right now has a lot of bright in the potential for their future, because not just with their
100%.
animation but with their live action. So I'm looking forward to Cape Crusader. I'm looking forward to this one. I'm looking forward to Creature Commandos, which we should be getting next year.
Yeah. About I guess a little over a year, huh?
Yeah. So
everything's starting. I guess we have a bit of a break, but like everything's starting semi soon. I did like right before we do get off here. I do want to talk about the final episode a little bit. We kind of talked about the show, as a whole, but not this final episode too much. What were your kind of opinions on just this final episode as a whole, and what they all kind of did here? Because like I thought it was a very interesting one, because like episode 9 felt like the real finale, and then we're like, how do we, like, what do we do next? And we kind of wrap everything up in a really interesting way. So how did you kind of feel about what they did in this final episode?
Well, I agree. Like, that was the weird thing, because when I was watching episode 9, I knew there was another episode.
Yeah.
But then I questioned myself, because I was like, is there another episode? Because this is a finale, right?
Yeah.
And then the episode begins very different too. Like, it has this like Thanksgiving vibe to it, where it's like, this feels more like an epilogue or the start of the next season than
100%.
it does feel the finale. But then the last half of it definitely felt like a finale for the show, at least with Superman trying to save everybody in the general storyline somewhat resolving. I will say that in watching them back to back on a binge, both episodes have Lois being like, Superman, don't go, wait. And
you're right.
Binge, that didn't work as well. That felt repetitive. And it's the one thing that this show has somewhat stayed away from. It has never felt repetitive. And that was one of those things I was like, maybe you didn't need her to say that in the last episode. Maybe Superman could have just left, and this was the one where she did that. Sure. I also think with this episode, they I think waited too long to reveal that General Lane was her father, because I think that could have been revealed in the episode prior, especially when Amanda Waller says to him, like, are you not afraid to hurt Superman because are you afraid to hurt Superman because he reminds you of her? And I think that was when they could have dropped that Lois was his daughter, because by that point, it really does feel like, it is the finale, and you don't get that, build up where you're not really like, when it comes to finales, you're building up to that finale. And here it builds to 0 Day Part 2, and then it ends, and then you have like an entirely different episode. That being said, I thought it was great. Like, I thought that the stuff with the parents was.
You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're back.
I got calls.
Oh no.
But it was a telemarketer, so we don't care. But like the parent stuff, I thought was so funny because like Martha, she's saying how you can't hate Lois's father, Clark. You have to like him. And then the next scene, she's like, I really hate that man.
This might be the funniest episode of the season. Just the montage of everyone grabbing like Jimmy, if it's Clark being like, it's the general, and Lois being like, my dad's crazy, and then Martha's going crazy, and then it just cuts to Pa Kent being like, I don't think this is cooking the way it should.
It's not to
so funny.
Pa Kent felt like a character out of King of the Hill. Like,
he's so good. He's so funny.
I loved it. And don't we love to see both Pa and Ma Kent.
They're both alive, yeah.
And that is definitely something that came out of Crisis on Infinite Earths back in the 80s. John Byrne ended up bringing them back, and they were alive after Superman became Superman. And of course, we haven't seen that in quite a while, if at all, in live action. So to see that in this season, it makes me so happy because we get to see more of them, and I love them as characters. I love their designs too.
Yeah,
they're really well. They're so funny, and I think for me, when you had Superman fight those
robots.
I think they said they were Omax, but they're also part of, I think, Brainiac's group. I don't even Kryptonian robots. I think we're still trying to figure that out, but that was an awesome fight to see Jor-El help him, and then to see Jor-El send him down just like he would
just in the pod.
It's that the parallels. It just was so beautiful, and him saying live. It's just that I loved that.
That was really good. Yeah.
And but then we have the ending, which I thought was a huge deal, because I think I suspected Brainiac would be a part of it, but Zod being a part of it is an entirely different thing, because now we're talking about Zod and Brainiac working together. And
that's going to be very interesting.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, Brainiac, I unfortunately knew about Brainiac before the season even started, just because the actor, I can't think of his name currently, but he's so good. Anderson. That's it.
Yeah.
I love him in Lost, love him in Arrow, love him in so many shows. So I was so excited when I heard he was playing Brainiac, not because I love him as an actor, but also Brainiac. So so early on as well. That's not typically a season 1 type villain. That's a season 7, season 8, way down the line type villain. And I think it'll be very fun. And again, Zod, I'm actually very excited to do Zod. Zod is normally that Joker type thing where it's do we need another Zod? But I'm actually really excited to see their take on Zod.
This one looks a bit different, because this one, was he trapped in the Phantom Zone? Because I'm so used to Zod being trapped in the Phantom Zone, but here he doesn't look like he was. He might have been exiled off of Krypton. They may have just moved into another planet. That's exciting. I think that's
Stranger, very end of the episode. That's your one of your final scenes where you pan up and it's all the people in those robo suits.
He says he's the minion guy at first, and he says, I found another world for you. And then the other version, one is Zod, and he says they will kneel. And that was the perfect way to end it. I can just imagine if it was a movie and it was in the theater, people would have been cheering.
That would have been.
I mean, they might. Who knows? They might do that in Superman Legacy. Did you see Blue Beetle?
The movie? Yeah.
So, I really really enjoyed Blue Beetle, but when I saw that in
Mhm.
theaters, there was like a bunch of like fans, and at the end of that movie, there's an end credit scene, and they were cheering at that end credit scene like
Aw.
it was like No Way Home. Like I was like, oh
Oh,
my goodness, they're like, yeah.
that's amazing. I love that. I I have a very like small like I live in a very small town, so I rarely get like big theater experiences. Like at most, I'll have like five other people watching a film in the
Oh
same
wow.
theater as me. The only real time I ever had that was like Endgame, and that
Mm.
was like Endgame. It was packed start to finish. Like even like No Way Home had like 12 of us in there, and it was the most like lame layout
Because I
for like a
believe,
theater. Yeah,
well, I don't remember, but like I believe No Way Home was in that period of time too, where it was like they had 20 showings a day,
yeah. Oh
and
yeah, that was
they were
insane.
really early. Where Endgame, at least, that was like one of the last movies I remember where it was like a 7 p.m. screening, and like
Yeah.
everybody went there. Oh, it was one of my, oh, what a, like, it's one of those memories that just brings joy to my heart when I
Oh
think about
yeah.
it. Because I still remember, like, after I saw Endgame, I was like on like a high for like the next um 5 hours of just complete and utter joy,
Yeah,
because it was like,
100%.
it was so, like, for me, I was like, this was the perfect, conclusion. And I miss that. Like I feel like it's been a while since
Mm,
I mean, No Way Home, but like maybe, when we get to Superman Legacy, or like
yeah.
some other movie that comes out. Barbie, actually, my Barbie screening was a riot. I had
Yeah.
I sat in between a grandmother, her
Oh,
daughter, I think, some, like a little girl,
mhm.
another mother and her daughter, and like they were just laughing at all the jokes, and it was like, oh my god, this is
Yeah,
exactly the type of audience that this movie is made for.
100%.
So
Yeah.
uh,
Barbie was also a really fun experience. Just seeing like all the like girls dress up in their little like fairy dresses and their pink outfits, and like I think the best is when like you see the like dad who's wearing all pink clothes and they're carrying their three little girls into the theater, and it's like that's amazing. Like that's what this movie was made for. Like it's so good. I'm so happy it's done so well. Like it's like probably the biggest movie in a while, right? Like that and like Avatar, but like it's so good. But with that being said, as we kind of wrap up the stream here, do you have any final thoughts? Do you have anything that we didn't get around to talking about here?
I Whoa, what did you think of the News Kid Legion? Flip Johnson, woman of business.
She was a lot of fun,
I
and
loved her.
she was. You know what? I do really like her, and I don't mean to go back to like Superman and Lois, but like the thing I love about Superman and Lois, and I think there's a reason why you maybe didn't, maybe a thing that you didn't like so much, but I love the like supporting characters of that show because it shows what Clark is fighting for. Like
Mm.
getting to see these side characters and the people in his life, it shows like this is the world that he is protecting. And as those kids were a little silly at times, I do think it showed this is the world he's fighting for. That and like White and all these other like side characters, it does brighten the world out a little bit
I tell
and
you what I
show
what I did love about them, though, is that you got to see how he inspires the
hundred
people.
percent.
And as much as I do love Man of Steel and um like Zack Snyder's universe, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't really get much of that in those
No.
films, because it was always about, how does Superman, um like, is he feared, how is the world
Yeah.
afraid of him? And of course, like at the end of BVS, you see he inspires Batman and Wonder Woman, but
Yeah.
I love seeing in this story of Superman, we get to see how he inspires people to go out there. Like, it reminds me of Amazing Spider-Man 2, one of my favorite scenes of that film is when the little kid, goes out to stop the Rhino, and it's like
Oh yeah.
this is the point of these characters. They're supposed to inspire. They're supposed to make people believe in, you know, the good of the world. And I think that this show, by choosing to feature these characters, you are able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love them. I love like pretty much every character in this show. Like there isn't
Yeah.
one where I'm like, you know, which is rare because sometimes when you get to animated, characters and animated stories, they have like filler episodes where you're like, oh, I don't know how I care about, whether I care about these. But this one didn't really have that. All the
Yeah.
episodes served their purpose, and all of them, were just a ball of fun. That being said, it's only about 11 episodes, so you don't
Yeah.
have like the 20 episodes. But then again,
Sure.
I feel like if you did, it still would have worked, because I still think that
Yeah.
you can have like 100 episodes of this show, and every episode will be great because these characters are so
Yeah.
great.
And I do think just like the length of them does benefit Superman very well. Like we talked about like Superman Lois and like, well, like why is Lana there and why is Kyle there? Well, like with a 45-minute show, you kind of need that like supporting cast to fill in the gaps a little bit, right? With a 20-minute show, you don't need this. You can just have Clark the entire episode, and that works for that world. And I think they did a very good job.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm very excited for season 2. Hopefully, it comes to us rather quickly. But thanks for everyone who stopped in today. Now, this is portion of our show. We normally ask you what what are you working on currently? Do you have any projects? You obviously talked about your YouTube channel already. Do you want to like shout out that, or any other thing that you would like to shout out?
Yeah. Right now, I don't think I have anything down the line. I'm probably, when Ahsoka ends, I'm definitely going to do a review of that series because I'm loving it a lot. So I would be on the lookout for that review. But I will say that if you are at all interested in what I have to say, usually I do frequent myself on Twitter Spaces, where I discuss a number of movies and TV news with friends, and we have like a grand old time and sometimes play trivia games and such. So definitely go on Twitter, follow me, and you'll be able to have a lot of fun talking about movies and TV there.
Absolutely, man. Sounds good. But thank you, man, so much for coming on here. This was an absolute blast. Thank you for being the like first in my like test subjects of bringing some more people on here, and we will have to have you back on at some point, maybe for season 2, or
Yeah.
seems like you're a big fan of a lot of different fandoms and stuff. So
Yeah.
you're welcome back anytime. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.